Paper Flowers. Chapter 4. Family and Identity. Virgil was lying on his bed, listening to music. He was feeling pretty okay. Not great, but all things considered, he was having a good day. Usually that thought would make him panic and try to remember what he was doing wrong. But right now, he wasn't going to question it. He had a list, he checked it twice. Today was just going to be nice. Woman was really getting to him. Here he was, once again being optimistic. And rhyming on top of that. A sudden knock on his door had him confused. Hardly anyone knocked on his door. Princey wouldn't knock on that one. The field had become their hangout spot. They watched movies, talked, listened to music, or brainstormed together. It was nice. So it wasn't Princey. Janice and Remus were out too. Both tended to invite themselves inside, if they wanted to bother him. One more reason to be happy with the field. He'd spend some alone time in there, truly at peace, knowing nothing could harm him there. If he didn't have to look after Thomas, he'd probably move there permanently. And he supposed he couldn't leave Princey to deal with the specs on his own. Speaking of those two, at least one of them was at his door. The knocking was back. "Kiddo, you in there?" Virgil frowned confused as he got up and walked to the door. "Patton?" he asked in surprise as he opened it. Sure, he'd figured it had to be him or Logan, but between the two, he would have put his money on Logan. Patton usually just announced that dinner was ready and left before Virgil could even respond. Then Virgil would go down to collect a plate and leave for his room right away. He'd been tempted to stay and listen to women's stories once or twice since they became friends. To gang up on him with Logan, pointing out holes in the grand tales, and laugh along as Patton made the joke, making them all forget what they'd been talking about. But he figured he better not intrude on family time and risk messing up. They tolerated him when they were walking. If he forced his company on them in their free time, they'd probably send him back down. And as much as he cared about his fellow outcasts, he couldn't go back there. Would his key work if he did? He should test it out, just in case. He was getting off track. "What's wrong?" he asked, trying to sound like he couldn't care less. He leaned against the doorframe to sound better. Inside he was terrified. Patton smiled at him nervously, leaning back and forth on his heels, wringing his hands. Why was he here? He clearly didn't want to be. "Nothing wrong, kiddo. Just dinner will be ready soon. Why don't you join us?" "What?" "Better not," he huffed, looking at his fidgeting hands with a raised brow. He planned to turn around and close the door to freak out in peace, but then Patton balled his hands into a fist at his sides and stopped wiggling. "Sorry, but that wasn't really a request, Anxiety. You live with us, so you join in for family dinners. I make Roman come out of the imagination. I drag Logan away from his work. Up until now, I've given you time to adjust and join us on your own time. But I'm done waiting. Pizza night is family dinner night. I expect you at the dinner table in 15 minutes. And before Virgil could respond, he turned and went downstairs. Virgil went back in and shut the door. What was going on? Should he go ask Roman if Patton had said something? Should he go to the others? Maybe this was a weird joke from Jay. Or maybe this is a test. Or maybe Patton is looking for a good reason to send him back down, prove that he doesn't fit within. No, that doesn't sound like Patton at all. What should he do? "Dinner is ready!" Patton's voice pulled him out of his panic. He'd been worrying for a full 15 minutes, and now it was too late. He took in a deep breath. He would not mess up. He just had to get through dinner. And Roman would be there to distract Patton, right? Right, he could do this. When he arrived downstairs, Roman and Logan were already seated and served. Roman saw him enter and paused his recollection of his latest adventure to look at him. "Evening, Seymour Krelbor," he greeted with an elaborate gesture. "Likewise, Bummer time," Virgil replied as he loaded his own plate, and to the surprise of both Logan and Roman, went to sit at a never-before-used chair. Patton looked pleased at least. He didn't think he could handle conversation, though. Luckily, he didn't have to. Roman continued his story as if nothing had interrupted it, and Virgil got away with just eating his pizza, thanking Patton for dinner when he was done, his plate in the dishwasher, and leaving for his room. Roman watched Virgil going up the stairs. He wasn't surprised that shortly after he disappeared from sight, he could feel a swift but urgent pulsing from the key in his pocket. He wanted to join Virgil at once, but then Logan said something that drew his attention. "Patton, what's the problem?" Roman looked at the parental side and saw that he was looking up at the stairs with a frown. Patton sighed and slumped in a chair, letting his head fall into his hands. "It worked, but I don't know if I can keep doing this," Patton explained. "What worked, Padre?" Roman wondered. "Tough love. Patience didn't get him to open up to us, but you seem to get him to at least talk to you for more than a minute nowadays. So I thought, maybe if I push just a little? I'm sure there is a wonderful kiddo hiding under that eyeshadow. I thought that making him join family dinner would help," Patton explained. Roman felt a little guilty. 1. He had given Patton this idea that had put both Virgil and the moral side through a tense dinner for their troubles. 2. He had all the answers to make Fat feel better. No, it was not his place to tell. Patton would understand. He laid a reassuring hand on the eldest side's shoulder. "If you wish, I shall retrieve the Pumpkin King in the future," he promised. Patton thought about it for a bit. "Are you sure, Roman? Will he even come if you ask?" he wondered. Roman chuckled and bowed. "No worries, Padre. I will ensure his company won't be lacking on pizza night ever again," he vowed, though he wondered if he'd have to break that promise. He'd cross that bridge when he got there. He used his key to get to the field. The others never questioned his doors. He was the prince of imagination, after all. Things like this were expected. Once he closed his door, he looked around. He spotted an empty spot on the otherwise smooth sea of origami flowers. He smiled as he walked over and sat down next to it. One leg straight in front of him, his other bent at the knee. He leaned back to look up at the clouds passing by, supporting his weight with his hands. "They do look lovely today," he started casually. "Still not doing it, Princey," Virgil replied to a question Roman had yet to start building up to. "He means well. He just wants me to be a part of the family." "I know," Virgil groaned, as he sat up hugging his knees to his chest. "But I'm not, and I'll never be. You didn't see him when he told me to join for dinner. He thinks that I'll turn into one of you, all soft and optimistic, and he won't have to be scared of me anymore. That can't happen, for everyone's sake. I have to make you guys cautious, so we can't tell him." Roman could tell the subject was over. He tried to encourage Virgil to let the others in as well a few times. Normally he'd probably push harder, perhaps even until he crossed a line that wasn't meant to be crossed, ruining their friendship in the process. But the field was so relaxing, and their friendship was comfortable and safe enough that he felt he could take his time considering his words. He'd found himself realizing that he kept parts of himself hidden from the others as well. Parts that he feared would make them lose respect for him. Virgil knew about some by now. He had very quickly picked up on how stressed the spotlight made him sometimes. He knew talking about Remus made him feel guilty and terrified, though they hadn't talked about the why yet. Anyway, Roman would be a hypocrite if he made Virgil tell the others about his true self if he wasn't willing to do so himself. Roman sighed under the heavy atmosphere. "Hey, Virgil," he asked, a small burst of pride exploding in his chest as he said Virgil's proper name. He was still getting used to it, and he was glad for their battle of the nicknames, or he definitely would have slipped in front of the others by now. Virgil looked up, curious what Roman wanted. Yeah? Did you actually listen to my adventure? 'Cause it gave me a few ideas. Virgil chuckled. Roman was probably just looking for an excuse to tell it again. Knowing this, Virgil nodded. Yeah, I heard you. Roman's face fell a little, though he tried to play it off, and Virgil grinned teasingly. But just to make sure I remember all the important details, right? Roman lit up, not even caring that Virgil just messed with him. He jumped straight into storyteller mode. So there I was. The prince found himself once more locked in combat with his arch-nemesis. Theirs was a rivalry written in the stars, an ancient battle between the heavenly lights of good versus the dark depths of evil. And he couldn't have asked for a better opponent. How long have we been doing this dance? Surrender, you know you cannot win, he bellowed, wielding his sword. Never, and 5 years today, don't pretend you don't know that, his opponent growled. The prince gasped, moved. You remembered, he exclaimed in awe. He hadn't been sure if the Lord of Evil cared enough. Of course you nitwit, his foe grumbled, a bit flustered. Now die! Both men raised their weapons and charged with a battle cry. You are browsing Tumblr. Thomas's latest video was hilarious. You are probably way too attached to the villain character though. It existed about 18 seconds. You take comfort in the fact that you are not the only one. There is art and fics about him and the prince popping up everywhere. And boy do people chip it. Suddenly you see a thread that catches your eye. You start reading. Considering how well liked he is, Prince's nemesis should have a name, if Thomas isn't going to at least give him a title. I put Marcus. It sounds badass, and it is. It comes from Mars, god of war. All hail to our future overlord. You chuckle, but Marcus does sound good. The thread continues with another vendor stepping in. He should have a name, but knowing Thomas, I think it's Kevin. If you had been drinking, you would have choked on it. Kevin? A reply from yet another user. Let me guess, you are one of that idiot's prince's squires. I'm with OP, the Dark Lord is called Marcus. Oh, this is getting spicy. Well, you are clearly a henchman. Just look at how the guy is dressed. He looks like the 2000s emo kid. Definitely a Kevin. There were more replies of people proclaiming themselves as either squires or henchmen. It's all in good fun. Plenty of laughing emojis made that clear. You hit reblock and take a moment to consider who you are going to join. Thomas has no clue what he started.